Is Nico Leonard a scammer, and is he ripping off his fans? That's a question that some people have been asking in the wake of his collaboration with Maen, which is a watchmaker that's relatively small, makes some inexpensive and quite affordable watches. However, that watch has come in for some heavy criticism. So let's have a look into this and see whether Nico Leonard is a scammer or whether some of the criticism maybe is a little bit going too overboard. And if you've got any thoughts about it, well, let me know that in the comments below. And of course, if you're interested in picking up a watch, well, check out my website. I have an Audemars Piguet for sale at the moment. It might be of interest to you. Nevertheless, what's going on with Nico Leonard? Well, Nico Leonard, of course, is, well, really entertaining to watch. Is significantly more entertaining than I am, of course. That's in part because he often takes apart brands, especially brands like Hublot, and he is very terse and very acerbic in the way he does that, which is really quite entertaining. But when you're acting that way, it does open you up to criticism yourself, some of which might be going a little bit further than would otherwise be the case. Nevertheless, his particular watch collab was with Maen. Now, Maen makes relatively affordable watches, like I said. The watches are typically around the €1,000 price range. It varies a little bit depending on the model and the like, but we're talking around that. They have some interesting watches. I quite like some of them, like the Manhattan, but I never owned one myself. Reportedly, they are quite reasonable watches though, albeit with some significant delays getting some orders, at least according to some of the comments that I've seen online. Nevertheless, they tend to be quite reasonable and quite well priced. Now, Nico Leonard did a collaboration with them to create a jumping hour watch. Now, a jumping hour, as a short version of this, is basically a watch where the hour is kind of in a little window and that jumps when you're jumping past the hour. Now, it apparently is a little bit more complicated to make than an ordinary watch, which is why some people happen to find it interesting. Furthermore, those have become a little bit en vogue this year, with Cartier in particular bringing one of those out, and it becoming reasonably well loved. I think it was positively received. So Nico Leonard was doing one like this, and it was relatively similar, at least it had a similar vibe to the Cartier. Much cheaper than the Cartier, but similar vibe. Now, the controversy wasn't so much about the existence of the jumping hour, it wasn't so much about the appearance of it, although, of course, that can be a matter of personal taste. Rather, the controversy was about the movement that was used in it. In particular, this particular watch has a seagull movement in it. Now, Seagull, for people who aren't really aware, is a manufacturer based out of China. They make inexpensive movements. They appear to be quite adequate, not necessarily fancy movements or necessarily the most spectacular movements, but they appear to be perfectly functional. Now, they would often be regarded as being a little bit lesser than a Solita or an Etihad or a Mayota. However, they're typically okay-ish, albeit often found in lower-end watches, such as some of the watches you see on AliExpress. Herein, therefore, is the controversy, because even if the watch happens to look nice, and I think it's fine, it's aesthetically interesting, I don't dislike it, and even if it is a good watch otherwise, the fact that it's using a relatively inexpensive movement that is often used in AliExpress watches really rub people the wrong way. And we can see this in some of the comments on Nico Leonard's post about it. And here's just a few of them. For example, what do we have that's lower than the Hublot category? Or $1,000 for a modified seagull movement. I'll gladly pass. If Nico didn't have a part in this watch, he would put it in the shite category. Love Nico and find myself in agreement with him, frequently. But I hate this watch. Heard someone describe it as something you'd see at the checkout at Gap. Very apt description. I thought he was trolling us at first. Dog shite. Another one, I love your work, love what you do for the industry, big fan, but not of this collaboration. It's a bit disappointing. Just my opinion. Now, elsewhere I've seen Nico Leonard talk about some of the reason the watch is a bit more expensive than some of the ones you find on AliExpress. And to give you an idea about the ones on AliExpress, and I didn't necessarily identify all of these myself, there have been some other channels talking about this, but you can just look at AliExpress and type in jumping hours and find things. For example, there is one from Surgis, a brand I had never heard of, but it's very cheap. And another one that has a similar tonneau type shape is from Farachute, or Farachute, I don't really know how you pronounce it. Some random brand on AliExpress. Or another one, New Merker Jump Hour. Now, a lot of these watches are going to be, probably not great quality. And I think they'll be lower quality than Maen, but still, people have seen these watches on AliExpress for under a couple of $100 and thought, well, you've got this movement that's used in really cheap watches. Should it really be in a watch that is asking about €1,000? However, again, to be fair, you'll often see movements like Solitas or Etias or Miotas used in both inexpensive watches and expensive watches, especially when those movements are modified. So we probably shouldn't be too critical, but I can see why some people are a little bit annoyed by the movement here. And I'll include a link in the description below to some of these watches if you want to check them out, or potentially acquire them, I guess. I'm tempted to see what some of these are actually like and whether they're actually worth even the $150 that they're charging. Some of them could be interesting to try out. Let me know if you'd like me to buy any of these and see what they're like in the comments below as well. And of course, you can check them out. I'll include links to them. Now, Nico Leonard has come to his defense by arguing that they had to do quite a bit of modification to the movement to make it work, both in terms of the case dimensions, but also in terms of how the case is set up in terms of the hands, or effectively the display of the minutes and the hours. And there's probably quite some merit in this. I do not debate that they probably did have to do some modification to it. Whether that modification is worth the additional money is really for you to decide. Furthermore, whether the potential for improved materials is worth the additional money is again for you to decide. Without having held the watch from Maen in my hand, and also one of the ones from AliExpress, it is difficult for me to evaluate how much better one of these two watches is going to be, and I don't really fancy ordering a €1,000 watch that is probably going to lose value, to be totally honest. The watch, as an aside, is 34mm across and 45mm long, so it is, like I've said, a tonneau shape. It's approximately 9.7mm thick. It's made out of stainless steel, which is not particularly surprising given the price point, and the movement, like I've said, is from Seagull and is reportedly modified. And it has 21,600 vibrations per hour, which is probably relatively standard. It's roughly what you typically see, and it has a power reserve of 38 hours. If I were to order one of these, I'd probably order the green one. I think that's probably the easiest to wear with most things, but most of them look good. I'd probably not particularly be interested in the black one. I find that a little bit uninteresting, but the green or the red I quite like. But like I've said, I don't particularly want to spend €1,000 on a watch that is going to dive in value. But let me know your thoughts about this. Do you think Nico Leonard is ripping off fans? Do you think he's scamming people? Or do you think this is a reasonable watch? I personally don't think he's scamming people. Whether or not he's ripping people off is really for the purchaser to decide. I don't view the watch, however, as great value, but that doesn't mean he's ripping people off. He can charge kind of what the market will bear, and I guess it's up to people to do their own due diligence when they're going out and buying these watches. But like I've said, let me know your thoughts. And if you're interested in checking out an Audemars Piguet, well, I've got one for sale at the moment. I'll include a link to that in the description below. And otherwise, hopefully I see you next time as well.